Hello and welcome to the AdTech Heroes podcast. In today's episode, we are going to talk about digital video, and I'm delighted to be joined by Barry John. Barry works as the head of sales operations at Channel 4, where he has worked for over 11 years. Over the years, he has covered areas such as traditional TV, operations, but more recently in areas such as programmatic, product, digital strategy and technology. Hi Barry, thank you for joining us today on today's podcast.
Hey Dal, lovely to be here.
Great to have you. To kind of kickstart, really, I'd love to find out more about your background and your career.
Yeah, sure. My overall background has been in digital advertising for the last 20 plus years, which is a bit frightening, but when I think about how long that is and how things started. But overall, my initial career was around ad operations and around digital display, and that was with a sort of traditional ISP back in sort of the early 2000s with a company called Virgin Net in the UK. And since then, my focus has been on progressing and understanding how to develop technological solutions. And over time, I shifted responsibilities from being operationally focused purely as in campaign setup and management into more of a technical role and a sort of solutions architect type role over time, where it became clear as AdTech was beginning to really take off in the early 2000s into kind of in the noughties to make sure that the business requirements were being met by the technologies. And often there were significant deficiencies in publishers with regards to the moving technology world and the business requirements around what to make how to make best advantage in the sort of digital space. And I sort of learned and progressed that there was a great opportunity and competitive advantage for the businesses I was working in to provide solutions that both protected and made the best of the opportunity afforded them, but also made sure that there wasn't a missed opportunity or advantage taken by the demand side, often because they were in a position of control and a position of holding the purse strings to take advantage of those businesses. And that progressed through as a pure ISP and into the video space, where I really began to focus in sort of 2010, where I moved over to BBC Worldwide, which was for the magazine function, so topgear.com and radiotimes.com, where I began to focus more there on video opportunities and began to see that video was going to be a great area of growth in the early 2010s, and that the opportunities afforded there for advertisers were both more complicated but more beneficial if the technological solutions could be ironed out, and felt that there was a great chance to be involved in that, and then moved over to Channel 4, which is a UK-based broadcaster, which is publicly owned but commercially funded in a kind of unusual setup. But over time, it's become a very early adopting broadcaster where we skew very young for our audience and therefore have to be fairly innovative in the solutions we provide our viewers. And we're very early into the video on demand space, and began to build out their technical roadmap and the solutions there. And I'm still there some 11 years later, but it sort of progressed over time where traditional TV and digital have become closer together, and we don't have a distinct team anymore between the two. We operate as a combined entity, and we find that's a real benefit for both mediums, and really there's a lot of learnings from each side of the fence to really benefit the other, and a lot of mutually exclusive solutions over time have kind of born out of that kind of very much symbiotic relationship of TV and video on demand becoming a kind of more packaged set of opportunities for us to work with advertisers. And particularly as we look over the long-term strategic horizon, sort of the next 3 to 5 years, there's no doubt that traditional TV viewing is declining, but video on demand viewing is increasing, and we feel we're pretty well set as a broadcaster who invested really early in video on demand and bet heavily against that, both in building the technical setup, but from a viewer's perspective, but also from the business point of view in terms of providing solutions to advertisers that work for them, and building out latterly programmatic solutions that have been in line with the way the market has moved. But we've not we've benefited from trading traditional TV and video on demand together, where we haven't had to relinquish some control to the demand side because we haven't needed to, and therefore have played the long-term game, particularly on the data side of things, where we work in a very controlled fashion that tends to be an audience solution that is GDPR focused and viewer centric, rather than necessarily focusing on some of the more immediate short-term revenue gains, which some of the digital publishers we know have had to do that in order to keep their business viable and breathing oxygen, the revenue that brings that in order to keep them sustainable over the period of time. But we've sort of been in a very fortuitous position not to have to do that, and have therefore sort of put the viewer's interests front and centre, rather than necessarily putting revenue at the core of what we're trying to deliver. So it's been a kind of roving history, if you like, but one that's sort of been quite enjoyable, and is something I've certainly found has changed every day, and the technology and the opportunities afforded by the technology is one that I find a fascinating opportunity now as much as ever, and certainly as the world begins to converge and the competitive set has grown for us from being purely against traditional TV broadcasters into the newer world of social and the Facebooks, Googles of this world. The next 18 months are going to be fascinating as the market plays out and the overall advertising industry begins to move into the new normal and adapt to the newer opportunities afforded by the more programmatic type buying executions.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point you made there, that Channel 4's been an early adopter of digital and kind of led the way really for everyone else to follow suit. Does that mean kind of your skill set and even your teams and the various different departments that are within Channel 4, that those roles have developed and changed, and in yours in particular, have you had to make that change to be more ready for this digital ecosystem?
I think so. We've generally approached for the last 5 or so years, as I mentioned, that we don't differentiate in my team between TV and video on demand. Each team is managing both sets of inventory, and we see it as the supply rather than whether it's coming through a connected TV set or it's coming through a broadcast infrastructure. And that's afforded us the opportunity to grow and develop roles within the team. And it's positioned us pretty well to allow people the growth opportunities and develop as they learn both sides of the coin. And fundamentally, we are providing advertising opportunities to an advertiser, which means that we're putting an advert in front of a viewer, whether that be through a broadcast, traditional satellite or signal coming through your aerial, or if it's coming through an internet pipe. For the operating team, hasn't really mattered. The tools and technologies that we use vary a little bit, and how we do that changes a little bit. But fundamentally, the objective of the team is to maximize and provide a really high level of customer service to sales. And we've learned from each side of the coin. And there are solutions that are in play in TV that we now apply to video on demand, and vice versa. And traditionally, because of the nature of the mediums involved, the solutions in TV have tended to be business-led agreements, whereas for digital it's tended to be technical-led solutions. However, when we've applied the solutions across both, then we can take each, and there's a lot more structure and timelines involved and discipline in the sense of booking practice with TV, i.e. there is a reasonable amount of time for us as a broadcaster to set up managed campaigns, whereas in digital there is a very much last minute approach.
I know that far too well, unfortunately. You've been told you're going to get 50k, for example, running a programmatic campaign, and what ends up delivering is 1,000. And then after the troubleshooting and whatnot, it just falls right off. But that's a good point. I think straight away, the TV ad space and that having that structure and that foresight, I think that would help massively to a media owner, right?
Absolutely, and there's a balancing act, i.e. TV was too far out, and last year, due to the pandemic, and this might well be a surprise to some people working in pure digital, that bookings coming in TV used to come in 8 weeks before the beginning of the month. And that was 90% of the revenue was seen 8 weeks before the beginning, which when you work in digital and 70% of your campaigns are late beyond the start date, by the time you've got all the assets, and we have the same problem, there's a balancing act in the middle there, and we've moved to more digital way of operating and thinking. We still have 4 weeks in TV, which we moved to last year, but it's shorter than the 8 weeks, not quite the 5 days, which is what we asked for in on demand. But there is a kind of, that's a good example of where we've approached it. We're saying, well, can we apply some of the digital methodology and thinking around campaign setup and management to the TV world, and vice versa? Can we apply some of the TV structure to video on demand and apply a set of best practices? Because ultimately, even in programmatic, you're trying to help get the money away, and the cardinal sin for everyone is, well, the money's just sat there and we didn't have enough time to set it up. The client's on board, the client's been sold in, the objectives are set, and it's because it's 2 weeks late or into the month, you can't get that campaign away. And we're trying to apply some of that thinking and approach towards the agency world and the way that we programmatically execute. And as you say, once you've ironed out the kinks and the problems, you've got the right target audience and you've got the right bid rates, suddenly it's like £1,000 you've got away instead of 50. And there is a happy balance there. And we've certainly found that as the team start to look at the problem through different lens, that suddenly the different questions are asked. So, well, why do you do it like that? And how could you do it? And could you do it like this? Has been quite a stimulating process for the team, and has positioned us well to kind of latterly address the kind of more future-facing strategies of the channel itself, which is around a future-facing and a focus on digital very much. And towards the end of last year, we realigned our corporate strategic direction with a clear set of objectives around moving very fast into digital at potentially the expense of traditional TV, which has been, we think, the first in the world to do that, where we're willing to sacrifice some of our viewing on linear in order to prioritise digital growth. We've had to do that because we're, as I mentioned, a very young, skewing broadcaster, and therefore our viewing is going away faster than most broadcasters, because young people's trends and viewing patterns of behaviours is changing faster and earlier than the older demographics. So we've been forced into that position, but we're pretty well placed as a commercial and an operational team to address that, and the team are multi-skilled, so we're getting the best out of the unit and the overall team as we begin to kind of head into newer areas.
How has the core audience then reacted to that kind of mindset of Channel 4? Or, are you listening to your audience first before you make decisions? Or, like you said, are you kind of planning ahead and making their changes and then seeing how the audience reacts?
So it's a little bit of both. We've some clear ideas around how we're going to reprioritise and move towards a digital first approach. There is a bit of a balancing act as to how quickly, because you don't want to go too fast to force the change earlier than you need to and lose viewers on TV that you needn't, because TV is still far, far bigger than digital by a factor of sort of 7 or 8. So it's still much larger in viewing terms. But by the same token, there is an approach and an appropriate approach that works for digital, and there's a very distinct strategy around the viewing priorities and how we release content, and how do we begin to look at, do we release things on digital first? Do we release it kind of all at once on digital once the first episode's gone on linear? Something we call kind of instant release patterns, or do we sort of drip it in as in one day a week? You've got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and we've been experimenting with that have been some really successful examples of that. At the beginning of this year, we had a drama series called It's a Sin, which we released on linear on the Friday and released all 4 episodes immediately on video on demand. And we found that the viewing behaviour was extraordinary, and the flow through and the completion rate of watching the entire series by the end of the Sunday was a phenomenal percentage of viewers had watched the first episode on TV and then continued to watch the rest on demand.
There must be tons of data points there that you guys gather online versus linear TV, right? And again, using that data is probably so important for Channel 4.
Absolutely, and it is the slight challenge is TV is still panel based, so we don't know the immediate effect on the traditional TV. We know how successful the on-demand piece is, and yes, we definitely use those metrics, both from a viewing perspective, view through, average views per viewer, and then converting that into revenue ultimately, saying is it a success? And that's the sort of balancing act I was mentioning, and saying, well, there are some of our core big ticket shows on linear that we are beginning to look at and say, well, should we release these differently? And we need to do that in order to drive growth towards on demand, and that's very much a significant opportunity for us, along with the commercial opportunities of creating products that exist in both worlds. And addressable linear is a good example of that, where we're looking at solutions to dynamically deliver where a user has an internet connection into a smart TV and is watching through a traditional TV channel. There are opportunities there for us to cross that hybrid world and really start to create opportunities for us to provide a more digital style experience, but within the TV viewing environment from the commercial side. So it's a very much a balancing act for us to move really quickly and make our product competitive. By the same token, keeping our linear products very much alive and best in class and competing with our traditional competitors, as well as creating our new digital products to be competing with our new digital competitors. And it's covering off both of those scenarios and moving at the appropriate pace, both for ourselves and the market, because we can provide some solutions quicker, but if the advertisers and agencies are not demanding them, then we can spend a lot of time slightly misfiring and looking at providing solutions that the market isn't ready for yet.
Definitely. And shifting our gaze somewhat now to the brands in the world that are spending, and we're seeing billions and billions spent every year on now what it seems like various different mediums, not only video but audio, digital, connected TV, podcasts. There's so many different options available. But I recently read an article on a site called Bandit, and they recently mentioned that video is one of the most powerful mediums to connect with consumers at both the upper and lower ends of the funnel. What I want to see is, do you agree with that statement?
Absolutely. A lot of the research and the opportunity for us, and we're very fortunate that TV, and when I say TV, I mean a big screen or any of our content, is very much very capable at both ends of the funnel, whether that be direct response or brand building. A lot of the return on investment analysis that we've done and the econometric studies that we've shown is that TV is still by far the most effective bang for your buck as a marketeer. And we as a broadcaster have the active job of selling that into to marketeers, and we've slightly historically, not missold is the wrong way of saying it, but we've slightly undersold the benefits of TV, and we need to be very much on the front foot, and rather than be reactive to digital, but be loud and proud about the way that our product works and why it works, and very much having an audience that is engaged and actively watching your content and seeking it out and fully there. There is no fraud. There is no opportunity for the viewer not to watch the commercials. That what is measured is particularly in on demand is definitely human. That we are loud and proud about those benefits, making sure that we're clear and communicating to advertisers and agencies that video is still, we believe firmly, and we kind of would say this, but we have the research to back it up, that video is very much the most effective way of reaching consumers, building brand, and also converting DR. The challenge for us is proving that in a comparative way to some of the digital entities, and the closed loop attribution solutions they've built have been phenomenally alluring to marketeers, believing that what they're getting is this full end-to-end ability to be able to measure everything. But certainly from a broadcast perspective, we can't offer all of that, but we can offer the appropriate measurement in the appropriate environment to justify that spend that we do entertain and we do receive. but it's also selling in the benefits that are not necessarily purely data driven from a closed loop attribution system. It is about that, 98.5% of our ads are watched to completion. It is about, the big screen environment, that there are humans watching and they are actively engaged because they're seeking out the content in an environment that they're really paying attention to your commercial and they are watching it. And that has the effect of driving sales and or driving brand building, depending on what your marketeers' objectives are. But our objective is to provide best-in-class measurement solutions, and are working particularly with the other broadcasters on a solution called Seedtag in the UK, which is a incremental reach tool to allow advertisers to measure how much incremental reach is being delivered by broadcaster video on demand, and add that to their linear campaigns, or traditional TV campaigns, so we can show how effective broadcaster video on demand is. And we need to provide more of those types of tools to the marketeers to make sure that we're communicating how efficient and effective the medium that we're selling them is. And then certainly that is what our sales team are doing every day and continue to do. And we as an industry have started to collaborate more with our traditional competitors, so ITV and Sky are the other big sales houses in the UK. And we're working more closely than ever with them to sell the benefit of telly. And, we're sort of aligned in our collective objective there of making it understood by marketeers just how effective TV can be, and TV in an on-demand sense and in a traditional, signal coming from the back of your telly sense. And we're working collaboratively with them to make sure that we have initiatives and plans collectively to benefit the market, rather than a kind of more old school us versus them approach and the kind of old fashioned way. Those are days that are well gone, and what works for television candidly works for all of us, and therefore that's very much our focus as a kind of future facing broadcaster, with a view to providing those solutions to our clients and our customers.
Yeah, I think that's a great point you made just now on the collaboration element. There's another the podcast I hosted talking about we're not collaborating enough in our industry. There's too much competition. Well, there's good competition is a good thing, but I think we do need to collaborate and help each other out, not on only a company by company level, but a peer to peer, person to person level as well, which I'm not seeing as much of that as maybe some other industries. But yeah, just I suppose the point you also just mentioned now about really getting on that big screen and providing ultimately what we all want to do as media owners is providing maximum impact for the brands that we work with, right? There was another study that I read recently by Pebble Post, and they mentioned, and this was a kind of a stat out of the research, it said nearly 90% of purchase decisions are made at home. So if 90% of purchase decisions are made at home, what's the best way to target someone at home? It's probably on the biggest screen that is in the home, which would be your TV. So is that something that you guys are really enforcing and backing that up with research? Because there is obviously research out there, but is that something that sticks true to Channel 4 as well?
Absolutely, and we are firmly in that camp that the opportunity to communicate with customers is at the home, in front of the biggest screen in the house, and that is typically the television, watching something that the user is actively engaged in and consuming in a very active way. And I absolutely believe that we as a set of broadcasters collectively, that isn't just Channel 4, but that's broadcasters candidly all over the world, need to be continually investing in research to prove that. And that's definitely a core area of focus for us and our research team. And trying to... There is a challenge of empirically proving that, because typically the purchase decision is made at home, but the purchase is made out of home. It can be made through Amazon and is increasingly made through Amazon or through online opportunities. But connecting the way that the commercial is consumed and then the active decision to purchase is more challenging for us. And that's our job, candidly, to make sure that we're providing the appropriate justification for the spends that we're seeking, but also making sure that the clients believe in what we're saying to them, and that typically comes through appropriate amounts of research, econometric studies, but also understanding the intent of what the marketeer is trying to achieve and translating that into the intent of what we're delivering from the consumer, and our viewers are going on to fulfill what the advertiser is ultimately trying to achieve.
Perfect. And kind of speaking hypothetically now, if I was brand new in the industry, working on a brand, looking at all these different solutions out there by media owners, and I came to you and asked you what are the different types of options available for us as a brand to run TV ads or video ads, what would you say? And it'd be good to kind of know all the differences, especially for our audience.
Absolutely. I think I would start with a question as to what are the objectives that you're trying to achieve, trying to understand what are the key performance business indicators that you are aiming for, and how are you measuring success. And depending on the answer there is very much a follow-on question to understand what the brand's technical capabilities are, and at what point in their own, for example, their own first-party data journey, do they have any first-party data? Can we talk about an integration there? We have a solution in play called Brand Match, whereby we can do a data match with the advertiser to import their data in a GDPR compliant way to target that particular audience. We can provide solutions that are around, traditional TV. Is it brand building? Is it around reaching a young audience at scale and building cover really fast? In which case, TV is still by far the most efficient and effective way of doing that. And depending on what audience you're trying to achieve, we are the best place to deliver a young audience, or is it a secondary audience you're trying to achieve? We can definitely deliver those on the more traditional methods. Making TV easy to buy is very much a focus for us, and the objective of my team is around removing friction in the buying process, particularly for new to TV. It's not straightforward. The UK is possibly the most highly regulated TV market in the world, and by that I mean each ad has to be cleared by a central clearing body. We only accept certain types of video files for kind of TV advertising. It isn't straightforward to buy, and it can be quite expensive to create an advert of sufficient quality that's going to reach appropriate scale. So it's just leading the advertiser through that journey, helping them with the tools that we've got to make that easier. We've got various different initiatives to help support them through that in a traditional sense. And with on demand, then it's understanding, well, are they a digital pure play? Are they trying to achieve a very highly targeted audience? And we could provide different packages of inventory, different types of audience modeling or creation from our own first-party data set. So we have a combination of targeting opportunities, whether that be geographic, whether that be who the user is, what they are watching, what device are they watching, when are they watching, and we generally package those to meet what the advertiser is trying to achieve, and understand that and provide a solution. And then beyond that, we have other interactive solutions that we can provide. We have a solution called Dynamic TV, which can create hundreds of different versions of an ad, depending on where you are watching or what content you're watching, and very much localized. We've done some great campaigns with Boots and with Tesco's, where we're showing at the end frame of the ad the store closest to the person. We can create the sort of DR styly opportunities, and that's across all devices. That isn't just across traditional, desktop devices. That's across connected TV devices as well, which becomes quite difficult to execute, but works very well for us. And there are a sort of combination of those product sets that we provide, and we will advise and recommend to the advertiser. So are you trying to dip your toe in the water, or are you going for mass reach? Which is the appropriate package of products that we've got that we're able to sell you, or is it a different set of opportunities? We have other products around social. We've got a new For Studio strategy, which is around creating content for brands and also delivering advertising across the more traditional YouTubes, and I I can't believe I'm saying that, more traditional YouTubes and TikToks of this world. It's not exactly traditional, but into those types of environments, but understanding, well, are they trying to reach the really super young demographic? And we have other kind of brand building opportunities there, and content creation around, ad funded TV programs. There's quite a comprehensive stable of products, and very much the job of our own sales team is to understand the advertisers' needs and guide and direct them into what's the best product for what they're trying to achieve, and will hit their objectives in the best way and most efficient and candidly cost efficient way for them, because for us it's about the success of the marketeer, not necessarily about the success of our products. We believe that if we provide a successful service, then the advertiser will return to us and it will create a long-term relationship with them. We know that working with us is a valuable and can be a very beneficial experience, and so it's our job to make sure that's as good and as effective as it can be. And the sales team are really highly focused on delivering that super high level of service, making sure that we're hearing and understanding what is it that we're trying to achieve, and collectively approaching that genuinely as a collaboration, rather than necessarily right, give us your cash and we'll go and sort it all out for you. It's not really what we're about as a sales unit. But it's sort of my operational team's role within that to make sure that we are reading market demands, understanding what it is that marketeers want, mapping that through to technological solutions, making sure we have a keen eye on the ad tech market, seeing what the options that are available, making sure that the newer technologies of this world are available to us. And the way that we work at Channel 4 is typically to go early on a technology and partner with the technological solution, make sure that we are helping them in building scale early in their product life cycle. But in the reverse of that, we tend to punch above our weight in terms of having access to technologies that we wouldn't necessarily have when they become more mature. And we've done that a few times. We did it with Freebill, who are our ad server. We worked very early with them, built out the product portfolio, worked collaboratively with them over the last 10 or so years. We've done the same with InfoSum, who power brand match for us. They do the matching process. We were very early into their product and immediately understood the benefit and thought we should move quickly and help them develop that. And that's worked very successfully. Likewise with our CDP, we use a company called Mesurithmics for that. Again, I think we were their first UK client. They were based in Paris, but we've worked really constructively with them to help provide feedback on what the product can do, introduce them to other broadcasters or supply side in order to kind of give them a road in. And we've benefited from then being able to provide best-in-class solutions really early to advertisers, that if we were later into the game would have either cost us more money or we wouldn't have had as much access to the teams who are building out the products. And we found that a really successful strategy over time.
Yeah, I think it's really important to collaborate and team up with the right tech partners. It makes sense. You could spend years and years building out your own version, and I've worked for companies that have done that and failed, to be completely honest. So I think sometimes it's best to kind of give that ownership to the people that are, that's their bread and butter and that's what they do every minute of the day. I definitely think it's right having the right tech partners. When it comes to programmatic, then how aligned are you and are your sales teams focusing on programmatic, and kind of how important does programmatic, how important is it in kind of like your day to day?
So it's a critical part of our product portfolio. It's very much, we see it not necessarily as a product in and of itself, we just see it as a way of working with us. And I think the challenge with programmatic often is it comes laden with some assumptions from those hearing the word to assume exactly what that means in their world and assume it means the same for everybody. We don't see programmatic necessarily as anything other than a way of working with us, and that is the pipes that connects in a digital way. In an SSP DSP world, it's the pipes that are connecting the two. In traditional TV, it means something very different, which is that's not technically achievable because of the medium. It's not possible to have that integration as a broadcaster. and therefore programmatic tends to be a sending of a booking programmatically, and that becomes a system-to-system communication for the booking that happens ahead of time. It's not a video, like an on-demand type scenario where the transaction is happening in real time, where there is the communication of someone has just clicked play this second and I need an ad from you right now. So we've been working on programmatic for many years. There are slightly different challenges in traditional TV world for programmatic executions, and there are some critical components there. And I mentioned compliance before, but compliance is key to that, is understanding what are the restrictions associated with this ad. And some of those are business rules, i.e. We don't want to put Mercedes next to Mercedes in a break because we have the problem of more than one ad in a break. We can't put Mercedes next to Mercedes, and in fact we can't put Mercedes next to BMW in the break. We have to have one car only. So there's an advertiser level business rule set as well as a industry level rule set, and then beyond that, then there's the legal compliance side of things where we need to understand what is appropriate content to be showing this advert around. And there is each advert, as I mentioned, is cleared. There's a central clearing body called Clearcast in the UK, and we have a unique reference number called a clock number for each ad. And we've had the challenge over time of making sure that the demand side is aware of those requirements and mapping that back through to our direct sold business and also our programmatically transacted business. And mapping those requirements has become a real challenge for us over the last 3 or 4 years. And we've been working with Freewheel, who's our primary ad server, and now who's our programmatic ad server. We take their markets product and have worked with them really collaboratively in order to build out the requirements and the business rules into the demand side of the programmatic sort of supply chain, if you like. And so for us, that's meant moving much more slowly than we like, because we've had to rely on partners who we're not their customer. We don't pay them any money because the advertiser pays them money. So getting a kind of position on their roadmap is very difficult. And the UK is a fairly big market, but it's not as big as some others. And typically the ad tech vendors tend to be global entities who are focusing across where they can make appropriate return on investment opportunities. And we understand that the broadcasters in the UK is one distinct market within a market of the overall programmatic ecosystem. So we've been working hard on that. We work really closely and collaboratively with the Trade Desk. They're a core partner of ours in the programmatic ecosystem, working closely with Google on the DV side of things, looking at making sure that we can support them, but we don't yet, but we're working hard on that, and understanding how can we make it as easy as possible to buy our inventory, but also protecting ourselves and our viewers against inappropriate ads, going out against inappropriate content for an inappropriate viewer. And that's been the large challenge for us, and making sure that the sort of demand side platforms are aware of those challenges on top of our slightly constraining view of data leakage and of ensuring that we're protecting our long-term business interests by making sure there isn't a data leak. And when I say data leak, I mean the opportunity to pick up a Channel 4 user elsewhere based on either cookies being dropped or pixels being fired. We have a very restrictive view of that, both to protect the viewer but also to protect our own interests. And so that's made it a longer-term rollout of our programmatic solutions, but we're beginning to get there now. We've got a programmatic guaranteed solution that's been in market for about a year. We've got a PMP style solution that will be released in the next few weeks. Again, we've been working hard on that and building the frameworks and the requirements for that out so that our inventory can be bought based on an auction basis rather than a typical direct fixed price and fixed IO or programmatic guaranteed business where there's fixed volume, fixed price, fixed guarantees as to the delivery side, and building that into our overall ecosystem and making sure that we are single-handedly yield decisioning is what's really important for us. We think that's the best way of us maximizing our inventory, both interestingly for us as well as our advertisers, because we're best placed to forecast where our supply is coming, and therefore we see very large changes in our supply model because of the nature of very large surges of very popular shows. We don't have a very typically flat set of inventory. We have very peaky inventory, but it means that new viewers come all the time, and therefore in order to maximize reach for advertisers, it's not necessarily completely even delivery every day, because they're actually going to reach more new users if they move with our supply model, because there'll be more new users on a given day where there's a lot of supply.
Must make forecasting really difficult for you then when brands come to you and ask for your typical reach.
Absolutely, it's a real challenge, and we've been working really hard both with Freewheel as our ad serving partner, but also we have an internal data science team at Channel 4, and we've started to roll out machine learning forecasting on both our traditional TV products, as well as translating that into video on demand products now, to say, well, it becomes really critical to be really accurate in your forecasting, both at a macro level to understand longer term how much supply have we got in the next 6-12 months, but also in a transactional sense for an advertiser who's saying, I want to reach this many people and I would like to reach this many people over this period of time. It becomes really important to be able to take in all the dimensions that are involved in that forecast, and been a big focus for my team, and the guys in the data science team are really super duper smart and frighteningly clever, but have grasped some of the business challenges really fast and have started to roll out forecast algorithms that are really fantastically more accurate than the humans that used to do it, but it's informed by that team. Their role has changed and morphed over time, and you mentioned before how working together has become beneficial for the team. The role of the team, the forecasting team, is no longer to do the individual forecasting, but inform the forecasting engine of what they think this show is like and what are the historical references that the algorithm can pick from in order to look at the accuracy of that forecast. And their role has been less physically generating a forecast to analysing and becoming more focused on exactly how accurate is the machine rather than trying to be accurate themselves. And that's been a really fascinating journey for the team. We're still only early days for that, but we're beginning to get there. Certainly we're beginning to roll out those solutions into both the programmatic world as well as into direct to IO and direct sold business. Nice.
How is the impending death of the third-party cookies affecting Channel 4's ads business? Does it have a massive impact? You mentioned you work with a few companies like Infosum and DMPs, you work with SSPs. But yeah, with the kind of death of the cookie, how does that impact your business?
So we've been in a very fortunate position that we've had to support cookieless environments because of the platforms that we work across for many years. So for us, the death of the third-party cookie makes no difference to us. We already operate in an entirely cookieless solution. So that's an end-to-end impression request right through ad delivery, right through impression event reporting, and into our programmatic ecosystem, is that we've worked on the assumption that there is no cookie available. And we're in a very fortunate position that decision that's been made by the platform owners and the browser vendors has aligned with our existing ad tech stack. And therefore, for us, because we already operate in that way, it's relatively straightforward, and our solutions will work today because they already do work and will continue to work for us. So the way that we work with DSPs and with the programmatic ecosystem is very much on a unique ID reference rather than a cookie ID, and we generate that ID and it's mapped back to an individual user whom we are familiar with. We only sell our inventory across long form video VOD, and you have to be logged in to watch it. So therefore we know who's watching what, when and where, and therefore we're able to generate an ID that's associated with that individual or that individual device, and therefore we don't need a cookie to either do syncing of audience data sets, and our own brand match solution is based on email address as the unique reference point rather than cookie ID. And we don't permit cookie syncing or any of the traditional web style options and technologies, we don't permit any of that. So it's actually quite a pleasant surprise to be able to say, well, it doesn't affect us at all. We've already got a solution that's entirely cookieless, and we're really well placed to take advantage of that. And the same goes with regards to, the IDFA changes and, the platforms that are adjusting over time to make their solutions more viewer and privacy secure. We already take that sort of approach, and therefore they typically have no impact on us because we've already aligned behind a fully first-party data strategy and behind a cookieless environment. Therefore, we're really well placed to provide solutions to advertisers that we think will definitely benefit us and them in the long run.
Yeah, I think competition is definitely heating up, because since GDPR, since the conversation of the death of the cookie, I know it's been pushed back by some time now by Google, but it just gives everyone a little bit more time now, right, to have their kind of house in order, and to ensure that they have the capabilities to service their clients, but also have scalable opportunities. So I know at the start of this episode you talked about your competition and how that's changed over the years. It'd be great to understand that in a little bit more detail.
Yeah, I mean, traditionally for a broadcaster, we would see other broadcasters as our competition, and they would be where we would measure our success against. And certainly in an on-demand world, that sort of slightly changed, and we morphed into a more platform agnostic type solution. And as Channel 4, we've been very early adopters of digital in and of itself, and worked collaboratively with the social platforms and with YouTube in particular, and have been through this sort of journey of understanding that actually the bigger threat to our business isn't the other traditional broadcasters, but actually it's the leakage of money out of spending on TV, and whilst we capture some of that leakage through on demand and video on demand and digital style products, it's perhaps not as much as it could be if we don't provide a appropriate solution for advertisers. And so we morphed into a more collaborative approach with the other broadcasters, with the view to thinking, well, Google and Facebook and the social platforms and the pure programmatic entities are more of a challenge for us. But actually, even of late, we've shifted again in our view to work more collaboratively with the platforms. We know that our reach and our brand is hugely successful on the social platforms, and we've morphed our strategy to be more collaborative with them, to push more content onto their platforms, to understand that there is still an opportunity there for us to grow reach and for it to play a role for us to have commercial products. And therefore, actually, we can work more collaboratively with YouTube, with Facebook, with Snap, and we're starting to run campaigns on those platforms and put more content on those platforms and see them less as sort of traditional competitors. And certainly, because we're UK based, we are regulated in a fairly highly way, because, as I mentioned, we're sort of commercially funded but publicly owned. We have a very distinct remit, and we've had to innovate in the way that we approach partnering with different platforms and also different content producers. We have a really progressive relationship with Sky. We have a really progressive relationship with the likes of Amazon. And as an example, we were carrying the tennis on Saturday evening on the US Open final for the women with Emma Raducanu, and it was only through being a really progressive partner, having existing relationships and working in a collaborative way, we're able to build out those types of opportunities for us. And we definitely see that we're by far and away we would say this, but the easiest broadcaster to work with. But that's not just because by accident, it's because we have a very distinct and partnering approach within our DNA. And that's sort of borne out in the way that we work with both advertisers and content producers, as well as platform owners and other content rights holders.
Perfect. I've got one final question for you, and sticking with the whole AdTech Heroes theme. If you had a superpower in AdTech, what would it be?
It would most certainly be being able to work in a really collaborative fashion with both demand and supply side. I think historically there has been a a lack of willingness to collaborate. And I think sometimes born out of fear of things to be lost or opportunities to be lost. And sometimes the focus has moved to be more business orientated rather than technology focused. And I'm an ardent believer in, if we can provide an appropriate technological platform that benefits everyone, then that's a more constructive place to be building your business from, rather than focusing on the pure business benefits and then building the technology that meets those ends. And the demand side and the supply side, certainly in the programmatic space, need to collaborate. It's not one side versus the other. It needs to be an approach that works together with combined objectives, and certainly combined ways of working. And as long as we're focused on the technical output rather than sometimes what are you going to gain from a business competitive edge side of things, I'm an ardent believer that the business benefits will come once you've built the appropriate technology platform. We can all collaborate together better. And certainly the projects that I've worked on have been a success across different suppliers, different vendors, different demand supply sides, where the focus has been on the collective good. In general, they've been much more successful and have succeeded in providing the business benefit by definition, rather than one side winning and one side losing. There is a collective benefit to be had there. And certainly wish that I could make us focus on the pure benefits of AdTech sometimes, rather than having business interests intervene, and certainly somebody trying to take a competitive advantage out of a certain way of building a technical solution.
Brilliant answer. I think we could even say it's hypnosis. We want to convince all sides of the market to work together and ensure that they work together. I think that's a great way to put it.
Absolutely.
Okay, I think that's all we've got time in today's episode. Thanks, Barry, for your time.
Lovely to be here, Dal. I really enjoyed that. Thank you ever so much.
Brilliant. Thank you.